Greetings and welcome to today's educational program, Hoshin Kanri and Strategic Planning for Quality and Lean Systems by Jd Marhevko. Jd Marhevko is a ZF of Quality for their Electronics and ADS division. In 2020, Jd was inducted into the inaugural USA's Women in Manufacturing Hall of Fame. She is an ASQ Fellow, Shannon Medalist, Certified Manager of Quality in Organizational Excellence, Certified Quality Engineer, Certified Six Sigma Black Belt, and Master's Black Belt. Jd is the past chair of ASQ QMD and has co-authored several books and articles on lean and quality systems. And so without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Jd Marhevko. This is your host, Shobha Mittal, and Jd, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Shobha. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us on your evening today. I am JD, and it does not stand for Jack Daniels. What we're going to be talking about is how we do strategic planning and to demonstrate the value we can bring to our business. Many of us on this call are not working in our production environments or creating the actual value of the product. We're generally white-collar people, and that always reminds me of the old black and white pictures with the suit and ties. Our governance communities, like our finance teams, they look at us as not adding value, even though we want to make sure that we can add value. As overhead is perceived by business to our financial teams, it's our responsibility to approach what we do with two clear objectives. We need to be able to design and develop our processes effectively so that when we do our jobs, they're done correctly, right the first time. And then we also want to design and develop them so they're efficient and they can be done quickly. In the quality world, it's kind of an oxymoron. If you go too fast, you could be having slip-ups and quality errors. But if you go too slow to try and make it perfectly perfect, it's not cost-effective for the business and they can't afford it. What we need to do is to convert ourselves into what I call blue-white collars so that we can be relevant to our business and our companies ask us to stay and play. In our functions, we need to leverage lean management, even though we're quality or lean or finance or whatever function you're in, we can still use lean tools to help us improve ourselves and what we do. And when we're looking at lean systems, there's 5 tools or 5 elements of success when we're going through and we're implementing processes to make ourselves as good as we can be. We want to understand what the customer values through strategic deployment. Our customers can be the external people using our products. They could be the next person in our production process. They can be a variety of stakeholders in our company. We also want to be able to deploy our activities across cross-functional teams. We can't design and execute all by ourselves without expecting some form of interactions from others. And we want to be able to make sure that we align the work that we're doing, our value streams, to that of the business's goals and strategies so that we're aligned and we're perceived as being able to add value and help. We want to be able to align all those tools and techniques to where we want to fix things. We want to do it across the business. And I put a couple of these little red questions throughout. So I'm going to ask this of yourselves, and if you've got a little pen and pencil handy, you might want to jot your number down. But USA Today used to be a very big newspaper in the United States when you were traveling across the world. And they did a little survey that they call Snapshots. And they asked what percentage of North American companies share their strategies with their people. And when I read this, I was stunned because I thought I had the answer. I thought I knew what it was. And, I thought, wow, it's got to be very high. It's got to be 80–90%. And as I read the little snapshot, I had to read it twice, and then I had to look up their source because I just didn't believe it. Actually, only 3% of North American companies share their strategies with their people. And I thought, that's horrible. How can that be? And companies give 2 reasons. The first reason is, and I don't know what the order of these are, they just give 2 different reasons. The first reason is that, well, we're going to tell the competitors, or the competitors are going to find out what the strategy is. And I look at that and I say, that's just an excuse. In today's day and age, everybody knows what everyone else's strategies are. It's not a secret. It's in their financial reports what they're trying to do. So I kind of look at that as an excuse. But the second reason that they give is that our people are too stupid to understand the strategy. They wouldn't know how to do what they need to do if they were even told what they were. And I thought, that's just a terrible assumption to make on our folks. How can we as leaders help the company achieve what it needs to achieve if they don't tell us where they want to get to? I'm hoping that in the more recent timings, maybe in the last 2 or 3 years with COVID going on, that this has evolved, because the only way we can do this is to give information to our folks so we know what we have to do. When we look at our process of making ourselves better, when we want to talk about leaning our systems, there's a common term called lean manufacturing, and I put the manufacturing in quotes. And that's transforming whatever it is we do, making those products and things that we sell that makes us money. And they have to be right, and they have to be on time. And when businesses look at lean manufacturing, what happens is that they fail a lot of the time. There's an organization out there called the Association of Manufacturing Excellence, called AME, and they did a survey to see what percentage of lean manufacturing initiatives fail. And again, I thought, all right, let's focus on our 4 walls of our production floor, and we've got raw materials coming in, we're making stuff out of it, and we're shipping it out the other door. And if we do this well, we should be fairly decent. And again, I was shocked. 90% of companies fail in lean manufacturing initiatives. And that's because they fail to include us. They fail to include our transactional teams. And we don't make something. We provide data and information that's actionable. And if our data and information is wrong, and if it's not timely, then our transforming teams can't be successful. And there's all kinds of transactional teams in businesses. You have legal, supply chain, human resources, finance, maintenance. All of these functional teams support the ability of the production process or the whatever system you have to create your goods and values so that you can make money in the business. If human resources can't get a qualified personnel to replace somebody on time, and that person isn't effectively trained, that hurts the ability to transform our stuff. If our supply chain isn't able to get us quality raw material components on time in the quantity we need when we need it, again, the transforming process will fail. We'll be delayed, we'll have overtime, we'll lose margin. So all of these transactional teams need to be an equal part of the equation, not a small part, but an equal part. There's definitely more transactional activities going on than there are production activities. But from there, I call this part the green square, I call this the 4 walls of a facility. And you can get a lot done pretty powerfully when you're looking at the 4 walls of a facility, when you're looking at how you're transforming things, and then taking them into the transactional processes. But if you're a larger company, you have to look at your corporate, the functions, your divisions, perhaps centers of excellence, and how are those transactional processes being done? I've seen a corporate team that had quite a few different functional teams, and the quality team in there had 25 initiatives, and the engineering team had another 20 initiatives, and each of those functions work in their own areas. Excuse me. Those initiatives end up being deployed into the facility and into the organization, and people just can't. They don't have enough bandwidth to do all of those or any of them well. So it's important as a business to understand all of those initiatives and activities that are being requested by the various functions. Regardless, when we're looking at a lean management system, We want to include those functions that corporate is overseeing, the individual functions themselves, are there divisional objectives, and things like that. But still, it doesn't stop here. We have transactional relationships between our customers. How well do we receive that forecasting information from them? How well do we give forecasting information to our suppliers? How accurate is that? How well are we listening to the voice of the customer in terms of what they want in future products or processes and services? What do they want? And how are we designing and developing those things so that we're ready when they're ready for those products and services? On the back end, when we're shipping and delivering, we have all of those logistical things we have to manage. Is it going air, planes, trains, or automobiles? How's the product being sent? We have third-party partners that might be adding additional value. How do we collect our money? How do we get feedback from the customer in terms of the effectiveness of our products? So when we want to look at our transactional systems and how well we're performing, we have to look at all of these things together. If I'm a quality guy, it's just not the floor anymore. There's quality in everything we do, and that's data and efficiency and effectiveness of what my transactional partners are doing as well. And I have tools and techniques that I can help them to be more effective and efficient in what they're doing. How do I take the data and information from these transactional teams and convert them so that we can have actionable responses to make ourselves better? So when we're looking at a lean management system, we're looking at all of these interactive parts going on. When we're thinking functionally, if I'm putting my quality hat on, or if I'm putting my lean hat on, or my engineering hat on, how does each of us apply, general problem solving? And many of us have, there's many recipes out there. There's DMAIC, define, measure, analyze, improve, control. If we're specifically in quality or automotive, we might be using 8 Ds, or we might be using 5 Ys, or an A3 process. There's lots and lots of recipes out there in problem solving, and they all work. They all have pros and cons to them in terms of how they're executed and the level of knowledge that people need. But as I look through this, there's plan, do, check, act. There's all kinds of different recipes to apply problem solving. But if I'm looking from a DMAIC perspective, I want to be able to define what those needs are and then figure out how am I going to measure it. And then I have to analyze where I'm at against that measurement. Am I meeting the target? Yes or no? If I'm not meeting the target, what's my plan to close that gap so I can improve? And from there, once I've got that improvement executed, how do I hold it in place so that I'm able to sustain those gains and not slip back? When we're looking at this, we've done quite a bit of research across multiple businesses. If I'm defining my problems and I'm measuring them and analyzing them and then I'm executing the improvement and controlling, which of these 5 are generally the ones that people have the most problem with? And it turns out by really looking at hundreds and hundreds of problem-solving activities in our facilities for the most part, this may be different based on your culture and your business, but what I've generally seen is that improve is the most difficult step to do. We pretty much know what the customer wants, either internally and externally. They want on-time delivery, they want X%. We know how to measure it. We do lots and lots of measuring. And most of our people already know the why of it. They know what's wrong, they know why it's wrong. But what happens is we often don't have the time, the bandwidth, or the cash funds to execute the improvement itself. Once the improvement is enabled to be made, then we struggle, or then the controlling typically happens because those procedures are done, people are trained, and control generally holds. But from what we've seen, that improve station is where folks really seem to struggle the most. We want to be able to demonstrate our functional value through strategic planning. What can I do to show that I'm adding to the company's relevance so that I am seen not only as a team player, but somebody who's effectively making a difference in our business. And the Hoshin Kanri process is how we take the CEO's strategies. He's got those visions of 3 to 5 years of how much bigger the business is going to be and how much more revenue we have. Excuse me. And how do we convert those to reality? So essentially, the Hoshin Kanri X matrix is what I call it because there's a big X in the middle of it, very fancy. It's simply a plan, do, check, act cycle. Sorry. And in that PDCA process, and I know it doesn't go around exactly in the PDCA, that's just how the matrix is lined up. And in the bottom section, those are the strategies of the company or the organization. That's the plan of the business. What are they going to do? How do they keep themselves relevant? Then what are we going to do functionally? What are our main initiatives to help those strategies come to fruition? From there, what are the actions we're going to take in 30, 60, 90 days to make those initiatives happen? And then how are we going to check those things based on our measures or KPIs? On the far right-hand side, we'll have a tactical line item of who's doing which tactical action. And I've got a couple examples in here that will show you. So when we talk about the customers here of that plan for those strategies, who are we making these strategies for? We're making these strategies for 5 groups of entities, and they're called interested parties. Many organizations now call these groups interested parties. And we may have different names for them in our businesses, and that's okay, as long as we know that they're included. There's the customer, the person using the product or service, the stakeholder, the investors in the company, us as employees, a supply chain, and then the local community as we're providing a tax base or we're doing social responsibility activities in terms of environmental support. And when we look at the various standards that are out there today, there's IATF, the International Automotive Task Force. There's the Malcolm Baldrige Excellence Award called Performance Excellence, and that's an award system that's done in 90 countries. There's the AME, the Association for Manufacturing Excellence Award. There's lots of third-party entities that will come in and evaluate your organization. Some are required, some are voluntary, but all of them have in common the fact that they're asking us to make sure that our strategy of our company includes taking care of these 5 entities. They want to make sure that our strategy is including the customer, it's including the stakeholder, and right now what normally happens is that most strategies are written with a stakeholder focus. I want more revenue, I want more margin, I want more cash. You don't see too much around the other 4 so much. Sometimes you see a couple of customer things, but community is usually not in there, supply chain probably not in there, and once in a while I'll see an employee item. But these organizations require that our strategies include line items in the strategy that address all of these entities. When we look at our strategic planning process, there's 5 stages in the strategic planning, development, and deployment cycle. SPDD is what we call that. And you can see that horizontal matrix is going across the 5 stages. And these are just 10 out of I don't know how many different strategic planning tools are out there. These are just 10 different tools. There's like I said, there's lots more, there's lots of books. But for us, we're looking at, in the X matrix, how is our strategy and business deployment, how is our strategy and business objectives, what are they, and do we know what they are? The corporation itself will do a retreat, and they'll go and they'll find out their core business analysis, and they'll do evaluations out there, and then they'll come up with core vision, mission, value statements, and they'll say, okay, this is the kind of company we're going to be, here's our mission, vision, values, go forth and implement. But for us in our functional levels, what are the strategies that we're going to do to align ourselves with these? And you can see various tools here. Line item 4 is pestle steeple. Those are different environmental scans that a business does, such as political, environmental, supplier, technical. These are just different scans that a company might do around itself to see where there are risks to the business. But these different tools are all valid ways of doing strategic planning. And what we're going to be talking about today is the Hoshin Kanri tool, which takes us across, once we are given those strategies from the company, how do we communicate, implement, and align ourselves in what we're doing, and then providing that performance evaluation and feedback so that we know that we're hitting the mark and we're contributing to what the business is expecting us to do. So let's talk about those 5 interested parties and creating that strategic plan. Again, as functional people, we are not generally creating those strategies. They're handed to us. And these are typical strategies that you might see depending on the type of business that you are. There's quality, cost, and delivery from the customer side. I call that QCD. The stakeholder is usually looking for 3 big things. They're looking for margin, revenue, and cash conversion. So margin and revenue are not the same. Margin is how much money I make for every item that I sell. So if I make just a little bit of money and I sell lots of things, I'm still not bringing in a lot of cash. And it depends on how many of the different kinds of things I'm selling. I call this the trifecta. And usually I see those 3 things on almost every single strategic plan that I look at. From the employee side, we're looking to be engaged. We're looking to be satisfied and safe in our work environment. And we don't want to have high turnover because that's very damaging to our company. Our suppliers are looking for quality. We're looking for quality, cost, and delivery from our suppliers, and they're looking for growth from us. They want to be able to partner with us so that they have a reliable source of income from our business in their future. And then in the community, there's social responsibility and compliance. And these are just some examples of what we might see in strategic themes that a business might have. As we do this, I'm going to go through an example of what one strategy might look like. And a company may have anywhere from 6 to 8 key strategies. They may have more, they may have less. And the one I'm going to focus on is improving margin by 5 percentage points by the 4th quarter. That's a specific strategy. It's measurable. It should be attainable. It's 5 percentage points is not unheard of. It's relevant to the business, and it's time-bound because I want it by the 4th quarter. So how might we in our functions, if I'm the quality guy, the engineering guy, the lean guy, the HR guy, whoever I am, how might I in my function help support margin? I'm not a salesperson. I'm not setting the price. I'm not perhaps buying the raw materials so that I can affect the cost of the finished product. I'm not out there trying to get more contracts so that I can get more and more revenue. So what controls can I do in my function to help the company make margin? And as we're doing this, I want to be able to focus on both the effectiveness of my team as well as the efficiency. How cost effective are we in implementing what it is we're trying to do? So I've got my quality lean management system hat on, and I've got 2 different initiatives that I'm going to do with my focus. How can I help bring margin to the bottom line of the business? Well, perhaps I can reduce warranty losses by fixing certain things in the business. That's my quality piece. On my lean piece, I might be looking to reorganize my product portfolios so that I'm eliminating perhaps part numbers that aren't performing well in margin, or I'm trying to fix them. So one thing to remember when you're creating your main initiatives, you're not the only function in the business. If I'm the quality person, there's lean initiatives, there's engineering initiatives, there's supply chain initiatives. All of my peers, my functional peers, have initiatives also. So if I have 10 just for me, and all of my other peers, 10 more guys have 10 initiatives as well, I've got 100, 110 of these things that are trying to be deployed across the business. So our functional teams are going to be set up to fail. Keep in mind there's a lot, as we see how the Hoshin Kanri ends up looking, there's a lot of opportunity for this to be interconnected with other functions so that we're not duplicating the same efforts. When I look at now, what are my actions going to be? How am I going to do this? How am I going to reduce my warranty costs? I might implement a warranty team to conduct corrective action and preventive action. Now, warranty means I've already released it that way. Shame on me. I didn't design it well enough or strong enough, and I've released it to my customer. So now I've got to regroup and fix. And I've got to get containment, and there's costs and losses associated with that. So if I can plug that up, that's going to improve our margin. The stronger thing for me to do is to prevent these things from happening by implementing failure mode effects analysis and control plan reviews on my loss leaders. See what I can do in the front end so that I'm not designing and developing future products with these potential risks in them. So by working on the back end and managing the front end, I should be able to do a squeeze play on where we have issues happening in this warranty side. If I'm put my lean hat on now and I'm going to the blue section where I'm reorganizing my product portfolios, I might conduct a value stream map on my portfolio and then rationalize which part numbers aren't working. So keep in mind that many tactics these tactics on top, if I'm implementing a warranty team, I'm probably going to take engineering along with me. The same on the failure modes effects analysis. I might also take supply chain along with me. Many of these tactics will be shared or can be shared across multiple functions. This allows a team to do one or two things more editorially and not have 20, 30, 40 tactics going on where everyone is now aligned on trying to do the same thing. If we look to the right-hand side and we talk about our KPIs or our key measurements, I always look at leading and lagging indicators. Leading indicators are much stronger because they help you prevent and control what the final measurement's going to look like. Well, margin by itself is a lagging indicator. All I can do is see what it is and say, well, I made it or I didn't. It's like driving a car and looking in the rearview mirror. I can see where I've been, and now I'm either oversteering, overcorrecting to get myself back on track. So margin is an important indicator. I'm not saying that lagging indicators are bad, but you don't need as many of them as many people use today. With that said, customers, our leadership team and our customers use lagging indicators to compare us against each other to see how we're performing. What we want to do in our roles as functional leaders is we want to be able to control things up front. The more we can control it up front, as low in the business as possible, the more power and leverage we have of controlling that output. In this case, warranty would be a leading indicator to margin. If I had high warranty, I get low margin. If I have low warranty, I get high margin. So there's things that I can do to start affecting things upstream so that I can get a margin result that I want. It's important to keep your KPIs to a bare minimum. I've seen individual teams with 30, 40, 50 measurements apiece. And what happens is we end up working for the data and not having the data work for us. It's very important. And in today's age with the Internet of Things and how we can so easily digitize our work, it's so tempting just to make tons and tons and tons of graphs. And there's no value add to them, not unless you're going to look at every one of them and figure out what to do and execute improvements. So be very precise and stingy on how many different KPIs you really need to tell your story so that you can do what you need to do. I usually look at a ratio of about 2 to 1 in terms of leads to lags. So this is what a Hoshin Kanri looks like. This is the example that I went around. So I've got my 5% margin points. I've got my 2 initiatives, about warranty and product portfolios. I've got my 3 tactics and my KPIs. And Joe is going to be responsible for the first one. Tom has the second, and Sue has the third. So let's see how these teams did, because these are real teams. This was from a real Hoshin Kanri, from a real business. And this was the product portfolio team, and their goal was to help improve margin by 5 percentage points. And when we look at that left-hand graph, you can see that where that black line is at, they had 8 part numbers that were meeting the desired margin. However, in that red box, they had quite a few part numbers that were meeting less than 0 margin, so that every time I sold one of those parts, I was losing money. If I look at those 2 part numbers on the very left-hand side, they were losing more than 100% margin. Now, if I sold 1 million of those, I could probably bankrupt the company. So the point is somehow we got ourselves into that situation, and this team went and they looked at the ones in the red box first, and they said, I have 3 choices. I can perhaps increase the price so that I can force myself to make margin. I might not get sales, and that's okay because these are bad sales for us to have. Or I might fix whatever my cost problem is and keep the price the same, but so that I can recover and get more margin. Or I might just throw this baby away and say, I can't use it. There's no way for me to fix this, therefore I'm taking it off as an option. When you look at the middle graphic, you can see this is after 6 weeks of time. They've cleaned up everything with less than 0 margin by doing one of those 3 things, and they have 1 part number left with 0 margin. And there's rules of engagement for doing things like that. But they also had to put in other rules so as parts started to de-evolve and get back to that condition again, they had to put in checks and balances so that they couldn't get back to this original condition. Overall, they had a 22% improvement in their margin. That was huge. They did this again for about 5 more big families, and they reduced their part numbers, their complexity in their production environment by 62%. This ended up this ended up having more cost savings than just that 22%. That 22% was just in the sales and the revenue portion. But if you think about how much easier it is in terms of reduced setups in the plant, a supply chain ability to leverage their supply base easier, not having people make mistakes and errors because part numbers look alike. There were dozens and dozens of other types of cost improvements that were made as a result of reducing complexity in this organization. So let's look what happened to the warranty team. So they had their first year was that black bar, and they went from 5 to 4. And in doing that, they made a 20% improvement on warranty. And the team's celebrating and going, yay, we did it. We got 20% reduction. And that's double digit. That's huge. But that little blue square in the middle, that's a competitor. And that's where that competitor was performing at as warranty as a percent of cost of goods sold. And of course, the competitor didn't give that information, but the customer called up and said, hey, this is what your competitor's doing, and look where you're at. You're not doing so well. So we're going to take a price decrease because we think we're paying for your bad stuff. So in the next year, we made from year 2 to year 3 another 25% reduction. Huge improvement. Still not good enough to meet where that competitor was at. So having those points of comparison are pretty critical to understanding the ability of the team of where are we, what's possible, and how are we really performing. We're looking at this arrow of desired direction. The arrow is not for you. The arrow is for people that are looking at the graphic. Not everybody knows that down is good. We want to be able to share and give information to our team members. So it's a simple help for them to know which way is good. We have the black line as the performance goal and the blue bar as that current performance. This particular team exceeded their expectation. They hit more than $2 million in terms of cost of quality expenses that were recovered throughout this process. So here's more of a live sample of a Hoshin Kanri. The strategies of the business are on the bottom. The initiatives for the functional team were on the left-hand side, and this was a combined functional team of engineering and quality and lean together. So these were 3 functions on one Hoshin Kanri, and you can see they only had 2, 4, 6, they only had 8 initiatives across all 3 functions. That's what I call very editorial. They were being very conscientious of what each other was doing and how these were written to support each other, so that each team didn't have 8 to 10, 24 to 30 initiatives. They only ended up with 8 across the 3 functions. The spots and dots helped them to understand which initiatives supported which strategies in the bottom. And that was just a straight correlation. If I did this, then that would get better. On the top, you see in the tactics section, those are the 30, 60, 90-day things that we're going to do. That tactics block, that moves a lot. As items get done, other things go on in its place. And then again, you can see the black dots are the strong correlations. If I did line item 1, these initiatives would be helped. The open circles were not as strong a correlation, but were helpful. On the right-hand side, you can see the amount of KPIs they had. Now, keep in mind, again, this is 3 functional teams: engineering team, quality team, and the lean team together. And all in all, they had 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, they had about 14 KPIs across all 3 of them. That's what they needed at this time. And they had a strong mix of leading indicators versus lagging. Again, the spots and dots help cross-reference which measures affect which strategy and which measures affect which tactic. Here's another one. This is from our ASQ Quality Management Division. Now, this one was a few years old, but ASQ in itself uses Hoshin Kanri. The Quality Management Division does as well. And this was what we used across our team for our leaders. And it's a powerful tool. It can be used for profit, for non-for-profit, if you're making physical parts, or if you're a service organization. It's a very portable, flexible tool. But as we're going through this, as we've worked across multiple facilities and on the operations side, we found that as we integrated our Hoshin Kanris and we had our teams aligned culturally, we were able to reduce our lead time by 50% on average. That's that green line in the middle. The different types of processes, whether it was a batch process like plating or a coating process, or a warehouse pick and play process, manufacturing specific processes, or pure transactional processes. You can see how, as we move towards more complexity, how more lead time was removed. And that's kind of counterintuitive. As we went through these activities, this enabled the average productivity to more than double. It more than doubled. And then the average cost per unit was lowered by 20% across the entire organization. This allowed us to do a couple of things. We were either able to lower our price so we could be more competitive and keep the same margin, or we were able to keep the price the same and enjoy more margin. Each part that was affected had a different story. And the thing to note, though, is the transactional spread. The more that people were involved, the more lead time savings we were able to get by making sure that we were understanding the flow of the process. In an engineering team, this is new product introduction time to market. You can see there's multiple functional teams involved here: engineering, operations, sales, and so on. Their lead time was 170 days to begin with, and they ended up in the middle. What you see is a swim lane diagram, or a swim lane value stream map, and each horizontal row is a different team or department. And they mapped out who did what when across that process flow and how they all interconnected. And as they were able to do this, they were able to reduce this by 70%. It was very powerful. By doing so, the company was able to turn out almost four times as many new products to the market, which allowed this particular organization to to get a head start on their competitors. So what we've done is we've looked at how to design and development that strategic planning deployment process, regardless of what your function is, so that you can see and tie your initiatives to that of the business. So if the business says I need more margin, I put on my functional hat, whether it's a quality engineering lean hat, and I say, how am I going to help make a difference in this area? And then what are my actions, my tactical actions in 30, 60, 90 days to make these things happen? And how am I going to measure these things? When I'm not perhaps meeting those objectives, I have to do that analysis so that I can work to close the gap and we make those improvements. And then from there, we have to hold the control in order to sustain the gains. I would like to thank you all for being here. My name is JD. You can feel free to look me up on LinkedIn. And we have done this form of work with multiple societies, not only ASQ, but also the Industrial Management Accountants on strategic planning, Women in Manufacturing, and the Industrial Engineering and Operations Management Group. So thank you, and we'll take whatever questions people have.
Thank you, JD. I do have one comment and one question for you. So I'll say the comment first. So can you please give us the source? And it says the author, publication, date for the 2% you provided us at the beginning of the presentation, AME initiative failure 3%, and the sharing of the strategy plan with employee 90%.
Yeah, the USA Today, I've not been able, I only have the clipping of the newspaper article itself. It didn't have the date on it, so I don't have that date. So I don't know that one. The Association for Manufacturing Excellence, you can Google that right away. Yeah, I can probably find that again. But that's a common result that's been shared in industry.
Okay, thank you. And then we have a question. What part of the process do organizations fail the most and why?
What part of the process do organizations fail the most and why? I'm going to need a little bit more on that question to understand it better.
So whoever has asked this question, can you please clarify? Rex Brown, can you please talk a little bit more about, the clarification on the question? So what part of the process do organizations fail the most and why?
So I'd be, yeah, and I don't know if they're talking about in the manufacturing process, in the transactional team processes, or in the process analysis itself. I'm not sure of the context.
Okay, so maybe you can just provide the answer, taking all the three, like one at a time, because we do have some time.
Yeah, so if the person asking that question, you're welcome to join me on LinkedIn and ask the question there with a little bit more detail. I'll be happy to respond to an answer for you. In terms of functional processes, whether it's legal, HR, supply chain, whomever, the different transactional processes, it depends on the skill and caliber of those teams. I've seen equal challenges across all of them throughout a variety of businesses. So it just depends on the skill set of the people. A lot of it depends on the leadership and their guidance and direction, and if they're willing and able to follow through on the strategies that they've set up for themselves without while staying true to what their goals and objectives are. And if you're looking from a pure process-based perspective, when we're trying to implement things, we talked about the define, measure, analyze, improve, control, and I generally see people struggle the most with actuating the improvement.
Thank you, JD. There is another one which this comment is saying that please share the source for 2:1 ratio of lead to lag indicators.
That's me. That's my finding after doing this across more than 100 facilities across the world. And I have found that that 2-to-1 ratio works rather well, making sure that my leads are feeding into that lag. We did publish that in a book called AKA Corporation Lean Management 50-50-20, and that is in that document.
And then we have two. So I think this was the clarification from the first question that you were saying. So possibly in the implementation of the process on the whole. And then it's the follow-up is that do you need the business on a whole to implement this Hoshin Kanri, or can it be just the quality? What is moving? Can it just be the quality team using this for their quality strategy that is linked to the overall business strategy?
You know, that's a brilliant question. Everywhere I've gone, the teams did not have Hoshin Kanri. It's a tool that I learned a long time ago, and I have found it to be very effective. So I start using it wherever I'm at, and as it gains good results rapidly, our people get aligned quickly. They get results quickly. It's a powerful source of execution. So then your peers end up saying, hey, that's kind of cool. Show me how you do that. So then it ends up spreading out horizontally. In the University of Tennessee, they came up with a concept called MOUND, M-O-U-N-D, for middle, out, up, and down. And when I come into the organization, I'm not the CEO, I'm in the middle. So I'm leveraging my Hoshin Kanri tool. So that's in the middle. And as it gets successes and gains traction, the horizontal peers, it grows across the middle, it grows outwards. And then somebody up top says, hey, that's kind of cool. Let me see how you do that. So then it goes up and they say, hey, Bill over there, I want you to go do it there. And then it ends up going down. And what happens is as a tool, it starts to grow up into the organization. So yes, it can be done. It has been done. It's a little slower that way, but it is powerful and it works fast.
Okay, and then we have another one which is saying that I used to believe that measure and analyze stage of the TMAC process were the most difficult, but you cited the improved stage. Can you please shed more light?
Sure. When you go out into your environments where you have a problem, we've got lots and lots and lots of measurements. We know how big, how bad, how frequently something happens. Measurement is generally not a problem. I want to say in general processes, if you're looking at in-depth problem solving on a very specific complex issue, then it might be measurement. Are you measuring the right thing? But generally, I see that people have the measurement down. I know what my PTM is. I know what my on-time delivery is. Those measurements are pretty well there. So then the analyze, I can talk to people and they say, okay, well, why is my on-time delivery not any good? I'll say, well, you know, my equipment was down half of last week, so I couldn't deliver. Or my supply chain didn't bring in parts. Or I didn't have people to staff my equipment lines. So they often know the why of it, the analysis. And I don't want to make light of analysis, but there's a really nice book out there from Malcolm Gladwell called Blink. And it talks about, you know, when you're looking at a problem, you know, 90-some% of the time, you already have that instinctual feeling of what it is and what it isn't and why it's that way. And that suits pretty well. We don't have time to do analysis upon analysis upon analysis. If my data is 60, 70, 80% correct, that's good enough, because anything I do, any change I make, it'll get me directionally in the right area, and I'll see if it's made a difference or not. I can refine and improve upon it as I get smarter, but I'm not going to wait to make a perfect measurement or even a perfect analysis before I execute. That allows me to have rapid cycles of improvement as I'm moving my needle upward or in the desired direction.
There's a follow-up question on this is, how do you suggest we handle the culture change of an organization in implementation of this strategy?
That's always a good question. I have to say I'm pretty bad at that. I'm not a very political person. So what I do is I ask for people's support. Usually when I explain the why of it, why is this important? How does this help the company, the business, or you in your role? People want to help and participate and be a part of things. I have not really found culture to be in the way of things. And people say that change is hard. And personally, I struggle with that. I'm not discounting it. But when I go into, we had a facility that was 130 years old. And nobody there was 130 years old. But we had guys that were there for 20, 30, 40 years. And they can clearly admit that what they're working with today, the computers, the things that they're using, was not what was there 20, 30, 40 years ago when they started. So people are changing all the time, every time. And if we remind them and show them pictures of 5 years ago, 10 years ago, people are constantly changing and adapting. And if you remind them of that, it's not so hard to do something. If you do have somebody that's really struggling with trying to do something for you, ask them to do it for a day or a week. Let me know. Help me test this out. Help me show that it's right or wrong. And usually, if I can get someone to test it out or to try it for a short time, and if they see the benefit of it, then I've got a sold convert, somebody who's converted over to that concept rather quickly. The other thing I do is I work very hard to identify what we call the natural leaders in the teams in the organization. And natural leaders can be anywhere. It can be the maintenance guy. It could be the shop floor supervisor. I always ask the plant leader when I go into a facility, who's your go-to person? If you had to marshal the facility today to turn something around, who's your 1, 2, 3 people that you're going to call and say, help me get this done? Those people are your natural leaders. They're the ones that are going to rally everybody, group them all up, and get them pulled together so that things can happen. Those are the people I work with first, whoever, wherever, whatever they are. And by getting their input and getting their buy-in, that removes so much problems and efforts of trying to convince a lot of people, because they do it for you. They say, all right, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, just do it. And identifying those natural leaders is really, really key to getting rapid momentum.
We'll take one final question, JD, here now. So this is across DMAIC, which is usually the most difficult to execute, D, M, A, I, or C?
For me, in my experience, the implement is often the most difficult to get to happen. It's usually not difficult in itself to do, but it's difficult to get the time or the human resources to go execute the improvement, or to get the funds or the monies if it's a capital expense fix. It's the time and the permission to get those things so that they can be conducted. That's my experience. And it does depend. Across the business and different cultures, it can be different.
Thank you, JD. I'm going to now stop recording, and we'll move on to